Wheat and other cereal grains are to be avoided on a paleo diet. As Dr. Lauren Cordain says, grains really are society's double-edged sword. Without grains, there is no way the human race would have grown like it has, and we would not be able to sustain a population made up of billions of people. We have come to rely on grains as the main source of food. In some countries, grains make up to 80% of the diet. These typically are poor regions of the globe and usually suffer from many nutrient deficiencies and higher mortality rates from diseases caused by these deficiencies. The main paleo argument against grains comes from the fact that grain consumption did not become part of the human diet until approximately 15,000 years ago. However, man was surviving and thriving for millions of years beforehand without relying on cereal grains. And by thriving, I mean that our Paleolithic ancestors were not suffering from modern day ailments such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. The technology, as simple as it was, we're talking about stone grinding mechanisms, did not first appear until 15,000 years ago. Man simply didn't have the means to eat grains and therefore relied on scavenging, hunting, and gathering for food. Grains, especially wheat, are full of very abrasive anti-nutrients that cause digestive and autoimmune issues, as well as neurological issues, and due to the amount of processing they go through, are very prone to spiking blood sugar. The main anti-nutrients are gluten, lectins, and phytates, all of them capable of causing physical damage. Lectins damage the fragile lining of the gut, responsible for supplying and filtering nutrients to the body. And phytates bind to important nutrients such as calcium and zinc, causing them to not be absorbed fully by the body. And gluten causes severe autoimmune dysfunction in people suffering from celiac disease, although it has become more prevalent to see people with non-celiac gluten sensitivity, and this is due to the increased awareness of the topic. Adele Height, in her very eye-opening talk, shows that when dietary recommendations in the US came on the scenes in the 80s recommending that everyone get their 6 to 11 servings of grains a day, obesity began to skyrocket. Of course, this was not the intention, but it is what happened, and grains do not belong on the paleo plate. Grains take the place of more nutritious fare and are not the heart-healthy staffs of life they are reported to be. The evidence against grains has been stacking up over the years. The bottom line is that you should at least test this assumption for yourself. Cut out grains and see how you feel. Take note. When I did this for myself, I could not believe the difference. After just a few days of cutting out grains, I noticed my energy levels going through the roof and my ability to focus improved dramatically. I was no longer puffy and bloated all the time, and one of the biggest improvements was that my chronic digestive issues went away and I started to easily lose body fat. If you're taking this course, you owe it to yourself to test this out. When you take the 28-day challenge at the end, you'll be working on cutting out grains right away. And take it from a guy who was a hardcore grain eater. I ate grains with every meal. It's worth it to try this. And if I can cut them out, so can you. And remember, one of the biggest benefits of cutting out grains is that you'll be forced to fill your plate with healthier options like vegetables and protein. The big issue with legumes, beans, and lentils are phytates and lectins. As humans, we lack the enzymes to break down phytates. If you eat a lot of phytate-rich foods, you'll be messing with your body's ability to absorb important minerals like calcium, magnesium, iron, and zinc. These minerals are critical to body function. Decreasing phytates in your diet will increase your absorption of minerals and help fight against mineral deficiencies. Lectins, as with grains, can cause issues in your gut. They will actually damage the fragile lining in the gut, which is responsible for digestion and absorption. We want to keep our guts healthy because they are responsible for a healthy immune function and absorbing all the nutrients we need for good health. At the end of the day, there are definitely worse things you could eat than beans, legumes, and lentils. But even if they are in the gray area of foods to eat, if your goal is to lose body fat, you can't load up on beans because you'll be getting a wallop of carbohydrates with each serving. Soy has the same issue as legumes with lectins and phytates, with some added issues of being loaded with phytoestrogens. Phytoestrogens can wreak havoc on your hormones. In men, phytoestrogens have been shown to decrease testosterone and lead to infertility, Plus, it may also lead to an unfortunate physical trait in the male chest region. In women, the increase in estrogen can also lead to fertility and menstrual issues. I've never eaten a lot of soy and I never will, and I don't even put this food in a debatable category. Just stay clear of it altogether. I've never seen anything compelling as to why soy should be included in a healthy diet. There are just better, more nutritious options available. Peanuts are not nuts. They are legumes and they have all the problems that legumes do with phytates and lectins. But like soy, these little guys come with a bonus problem in the way of aflatoxins. Aflatoxins are actually a kind of mold that grow on peanuts. These little boogers won't necessarily cause any symptoms, but a small dose of aflatoxins on a regular basis is a known risk for liver cancer. No thanks. I'll skip the peanuts and the peanut butter, and I'll choose a better option like almond butter or some butter. With sugar, I'm not just talking about the white stuff in a jar on the kitchen counter that you spoon into your coffee every morning, or used to anyway. We all know too much of that is not going to be a good thing. I'm also talking about consuming too much concentrated fructose in the way of fruit juices, and also relying on eating a lot of starchy foods for a majority of your calories. I'm even talking about the paleo-friendly treats that seem to take up a lot of space on paleo blogs these days. The main issue with too much sugar is that you are ruining the natural mechanisms that will keep you lean and healthy. By constantly having your blood sugar going through the roof, you will make it impossible to lose body fat. If you want to lose 10 pounds or 100 pounds, you'll need to limit sugar in all its forms. Carbohydrate intake will now become more of a requirement to replace low glycogen stores in your muscles. Once that is covered, you don't need any more glycogen, so eating excess carbohydrate or sugar after this point will simply lead to weight and fat gain. There's simply no other route for it to take. And sugar is sneaky. In fact, a lot of these foods to avoid are sneaky because they can be found in almost any processed food at the grocery store. And since 90% of the food found at your local supermarket comes in a box or bag, chances are it has sugar and some of the other ingredients you need to kick to the curb. Stick to whole foods and skip the boxes and bags. One side effect of eating this way is that your grocery shopping time gets cut in half. Isn't that great? Not all fats are bad for you, but not all of them are good for you either. Specifically, heavily refined and processed fats like vegetable oils, peanut oil, seed oils, and margarines. These fats were brought on the scene back in the days of demonizing animal fats like good old-fashioned butter. The issue that is well documented now is that these refined vegetable oils and margarines are loaded with omega-6 fatty acids, which are actually not good for you at all. Omega-6s are very pro-inflammatory and are bad for your heart. Stay clear of products like I Can't Believe It's Not Butter, Crisco, Country Crock, Earth Balance, Smart Balance, margarine, and the likes. Also, avoid eating foods that are cooked and fried in these types of oils, and just stay clear of them at all costs. Dairy is a tough one. In its raw and unrefined state, it actually has a lot going for it in the health department. Lots of good fats, and when it's fermented in things like yogurt and kefir, it provides a great probiotic boost to keep your tummy happy. However, most milk that lines the shelves has been stripped of most of its healthy fats, and it comes from cows that might not necessarily be getting the best diets and environments. A lot of people have a hard time digesting the lactose and casein in milk. If this is your situation, then you need to stay away from milk and dairy. However, some people can handle some dairy in the form of yogurt, kefir, cheese, and some other foods. Also, it's well documented that milk causes insulin spikes. We've talked about how important it is to keep your blood sugar in check if you want to lose body fat. So if losing body fat is the goal, then it's probably not going to be a good idea to consume a bunch of milk and dairy products. Overall, this is one of those areas you need to test. I personally eat things such as butter, full-fat organic heavy cream, and some cheese, yogurt, and kefir on occasion. With dairy fat, quality is important. You'll see a lot of talk about raw dairy being best within paleo circles, but it's almost impossible to find. My recommendation is to stick with dairy foods from organic, grass-fed cows, and always get the full-fat versions of dairy foods you choose to eat. But again, if losing body fat is the goal, then limiting dairy intake is going to be recommended. You'll need to test it out for yourself and see how your body responds. So this is such a great quote by Diane Sanfilippo. She wrote the book Practical Paleo, if you're not familiar, and it's a great resource, and I highly suggest that you pick up a copy. But from the book, she says, refining foods to improve them is oxymoronic at worst and nonsensical at best. And you know, that's true. I often wonder what we're all thinking. How in the world could a box full of chemical ingredients, preservatives, and enhancers be healthier than an apple picked off a tree or a sirloin steak from a wild animal? It truly is nonsensical thought. Please stay focused on the big issue. I gave you some foods to avoid, and I even explained why to avoid them. And you can go ahead and read more about the issues I brought up with the supporting docs and resources. However, when it comes to implementation, if you always stay focused on eating real food that comes from its most natural, unmodified state, you'll be in great shape and you'll see results. For a lot of people, just making the change from eating a bunch of processed garbage to eating real whole foods is enough to see a dramatic body transformation. Not to mention, you will feel better with higher energy levels, better focus, and a better mood. So let this be your guiding mantra. Eat real food that tastes good and makes you feel good at the same time. And remember to test things out for yourself. We'll talk more about how to do a proper test here shortly, but remember that you are an individual and your body will react differently to different foods than mine will. Now let's have some fun and talk about the awesome foods you should be eating while on a paleo diet. So now we're going to get into the foods that you can eat, and it's a long list of foods. Do not be fooled into thinking that you're going to have to deprive yourself of, very good tasting, rich, satisfying foods. That's not the case with paleo. In fact, I don't think I've ever eaten this well in my life. When I switched to paleo, I switched from a diet made up of mostly processed, unnatural foods that I thought were good and good for me. But in all reality, when switching over to the paleo diet, I was eating foods that tasted way better than the foods I was eating before. And they were more satisfying and filling. They didn't leave me feeling hungry and having energy crashes. And overall, it's just a better diet experience. You actually start to really enjoy the foods you're eating because you're eating foods that your body was meant to eat. So I'm really excited to share all these foods with you that you can eat. And we'll talk about some of my favorite recipes, and I'll give you some resources to get you started. So one quote I want to share with you is from one of my favorite health and nutrition authors, John Berardi. And he said, with all the media hype out there, the key to staying lean and mean is still diet, specifically good food choices. And that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on the big wins here, and that is making good food choices a majority of the time. Again, we're not striving for perfection. There's no way you'll be perfect with this, and that is okay. We'll talk about how to handle that here in a few moments. But stay focused on just choosing the right foods a majority of the time, and you're going to see great results and you're going to feel great. So let's talk about the main categories that we'll be choosing our foods from. I want you to eat plenty of foods from these categories. The first is meat, and we'll talk about quality of meat and so forth here in just a bit. But plenty of meat that makes up a big majority of your protein, has a lot of good amino acids that you need for rebuilding muscle and things of that nature. So meat will be a big part of this diet. Poultry and eggs. Eggs are a wonderful food source, a wonderful protein source. They're actually, as far as utilization of protein, eggs are at the top of the pile when it comes to foods coming from animals. So poultry and eggs. Fish and seafood. So we've talked a little bit about omega-6 versus omega-3 fatty acids in the body and how the ratio of omega-6 is way higher than it should be. So we need to get more omega-3 fatty acids into our diet, and we can do that with eating wild caught fish and seafood. Vegetables and fruit. So I said meat was a big part of this diet. That's true. That's how we get a lot of good proteins and amino acids. But vegetables and fruits are essential to the paleo diet. In fact, your plate can have as much vegetables as you can possibly fit on it with every meal, and that would be a great thing. So eat vegetables. Fruit is still healthy and good for you. I would try to stick with stuff that's in season, and we'll talk more about why that is here shortly, but stick with stuff that's in season and don't overdo it with the fruit, because fruit does contain fructose and that can still be problematic. But especially with things like fruit juice, which you'll want to avoid. And I know it sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but it's so much concentrated fructose that it's really doing you more harm than good. So vegetables and fruit are going to be important. And then lastly, good fats. Your diet is actually going to have a lot of fat in it. We've been kind of fibbed to when it comes to fat intake and what's good and what's bad. We've been led to believe that fat is bad at all costs and we should just avoid it at all costs. And that's simply not true. Your body requires good healthy fats to operate in an optimal fashion. Fats are good. So let's get that in our minds right now. Let's get clear. Fats are good, but it's good fats. So we'll talk about that. And that's the fat you get in things like grass-fed animals, from your fish, from your eggs. Those sort of fats are all good fats. So we'll talk about getting more of those in your diet as well.
Hi guys, so today I want to talk to you about the diet that I've been doing that has allowed me to rapidly lose a lot of weight very fast. So a few weeks ago, I noticed that I had put on a few extra pounds of unwanted fat, 10 pounds to be exactly. I guess during the holidays, I'd let myself go and I really hadn't been doing much exercise. So I started searching around for answers on how to lose weight quickly because I really wasn't interested in doing a long, boring 6-month diet or anything like that. I just wanted to lose the weight fast. So I came across this program called the 2-Week Diet by Brian Flatt, and this is their website. And it promised to make me lose 8 to 16 pounds of body fat, trim 2 to 3 inches in my waistline, and go down several dress sizes, all in just 14 days. So I was very intrigued, but also a little bit skeptical. So I did some research and I read a lot of reviews online about the program, and unlike other diets out there, like 99.9% of them were positive. People were getting seriously good results with this diet, and I read about some people losing up to like 20 pounds even in just 2 weeks. So I decided to go ahead and sign up. After all, I had nothing to lose except my unwanted fat. And after joining, I immediately got an email from the creator of the program, Brian Flatt, who filled me in on what needed to be done to start the diet. He provided me with the 4 handbooks and asked a couple of questions about my health at the time and my goals. So I got my specially crafted diet plan, which contained what foods I could and couldn't eat, the quantities I should eat, my meal times, and even when I should be drinking water if I wanted to lose weight. So the books contained some seriously high quality information about weight loss that I never even heard of before. I had no idea that cellular inflammation was one of the major causes of weight gain for most people, and that was partly why I had put on weight. After 1 week of following the program, I hopped onto the scale to weigh myself, and much to my surprise, I had gone down 7 pounds. That was a weight reduction of 1 pound per day, and I could not believe it. The diet hadn't been that difficult at all. In fact, there were times where I forgot that I was even on a diet. I was still able to eat plenty of my favorite foods, and I was able to treat myself when I felt like it. So now I'm on day 13 of the 14 days, and I've reached my 10-pound weight loss goal. So I'll probably stick with the diet for a few more days just to lose some extra pounds and to tone up my stomach some more. My advice to anyone out there looking to lose weight quickly without beating yourself up in the gym, starving yourself, or eating boring salads for months on end is to try the 2-week diet. I guarantee that it will work for you just like it did for me.